Hello and greetings. Today we have our CC01 Amarok back on the table. You might recognize this truck from our past videos. Today we're going to do a little bit of work to it. This CC01 has seen some trail use and we've decided that it needs to have the front differential locked. If you saw our past video when we built this truck, we left the front end unlocked and decided to give it a try that way, but it is definitely now time to lock this differential. So how do we plan on locking the differential? It is using these gears right here. Our CC01 came with these extra diff gears, and we are going to use these to lock the stock front differential. We'll walk you through how we're going to do that. Yours may not have came with these. If not, these are easy to obtain. Just go to your parts manual or download one online, look up the part number, and purchase them. Be about $5. Nice, quick, easy, cheap way to go about it. First things first, locking differential. What's that mean? Well, let's remove the body first. And now let's take a look. Here in the rear, it has a locked differential. We locked this when we put it together. It came with some shim plates which they will put on each side of the differential, the gears inside, to lock them. And that means whenever the rear tire turns, the other one turns the same way. They are locked together. Whenever the drive shaft spins, the tires have no choice but to turn because the ring gear is locked, locks the axles to the ring gear, so it all turns together. In the front though, that's not the case. There's a set of spider gears here in the middle, and basically that means that the tires, one can turn opposite of the other. They are not locked together. So what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to lock this front diff, and that would mean both these front tires will turn together like the rear. Essentially, it'll lock the front tires to each other, and it'll lock the rear together. So that way all four tires will turn at the same time. Like right now, if you notice, only 3 tires do have to turn at a time. That's it. This will help climbing a lot because whenever you get in a bind, it'll cause the tire that doesn't have no weight on to unload and spin freely. And that's not a situation you want whenever you're trying to climb, especially up over a tight off camber, out of some rocks, out of a hole or something like that. The downside being this can hurt your turning radius, but it's minor, and we've modified the turning on this to a point that I don't think it'll be an issue. Our first step is we're going to take a brush and knock the dirt out of here because we have to remove this top plate right here. In my case, I also have to remove this radio box tray that I put in here. So I'll unplug my radio gear and remove this radio tray here as well to get it out of the way. And then this whole top piece has to come off. This will be messy because the gears in here do have grease on them, so be prepared for that. At the time I'm doing this though, I'm also going to replace this 27 turn motor with a higher turn motor just because the CC01, this motor is too fast with gearing in this truck. So we're going to replace it with something a little bit slower as well. Okay, well, time to get started. We used a soft bristled brush to knock the dirt out of there, and now we're going to remove that cover so we can get down to removing that front diff. My homemade radio tray is out of the way. Now the real work can begin. Okay, now we will remove this cover. And we will set it aside. If you bought your CC01 assembled and are not familiar with the internals, this gear right here in the front is your diff. That's the one we'll be removing and taking apart to lock up, to lock the internal moving parts on it. Now before we can pop this gear out, there's something we need to do. It's easier to take the tires off, so that's what I'm going to do. In here, you see these drive cups right here? Those have to come out. So what you're going to have to do is, there's a link mounts right here. I'm going to pull the tire off. I'll show it to you, make it a little bit easier. We have to pop that link off so we can pull the dog bone, so then we can pull that drive cup out. There we go. Now you can see a little bit better. This screw right here needs to come out, and it'll let this swing away and let you pull this dog bone right here out of that drive cup. And then let you pull the drive cup out of the center diff. You need to do that on both sides. I got the link undone. The dog bone slides out. Go ahead and just lay it aside. And now we got to reach in and pull out that drive cup. Just reach in there and we'll pull it out. Try and do it here so you have a good view of me pulling it out. Like so. See? And we'll just set it aside. And then we just do the same for the other side. We'll remove the screw right here in the upper link. Now on mine, when I put it together, I shimmed between the link and the hub there, the C-hub, because there was just a little bit more play-in than I liked. But given the CC01s are old designs, it's kind of common in the older kits. So make sure if you did that you remember where you put your shims at. Make sure you put them back in whenever you reassemble it. Set that aside. Same thing once again, we pull out the dog bone. And there it is. Okay, so we'll just clean that up, we'll set that aside, and then we'll be ready to pull that diff. Now I've got my gloves on. My gloves don't match, but that's okay. So, first thing we gotta do is pull this gear right here out. This little counter gear, pull it out, set it aside. And now our diff gear right here is ready to pull straight up out. You may have to get a little screwdriver to get it up out, or you can turn the truck upside down, kind of shake it, it'll fall out into your hand. But then again, so will this gear right here will fall out too. If it falls out, just put it back in. No harm there. Now, so now that you have your diff out, go ahead and clean it off because we need to remove the screws. And with all this grease on it, we can't even see the screw holes. So, let's remove the grease. We need to find which side the screw holes are on. There they are. There they are. So, let's go ahead and clean this up real good. I'm going to clean both sides. I'm even going to clean all the teeth just because I don't want grease all over me. You can understand. Once you have it cleaned up, we're going to take out these 3 screws. Just take a screwdriver and loosen up all 3 screws. Take them all the way out. I'm going to go ahead here and move my CC01 back. Move over a tray that I prepped earlier with a napkin in it. For the parts to fall onto, so this way I don't get grease all over the workbench. And it keeps all my parts in one place. Okay, there we go. The cover came off. And you can see the inside of the diff. You see inside here, you see these 3 gears? There's holes in between those. We're going to take one of these gears here, and it's going to slide down in there. It's going to take some work, some wiggling to get it down between these gears. But we're going to work one of these gears down between those 2 gears. And that's going to end up jamming up the gears around the outside. Now, if it's not wanting to wiggle into place, you can take one of the output shafts, slide it into the outside, and use it. See how I pushed up on it and I'm wiggling the gears? And wiggling it, and it's working its way down in there. It's going to take some wiggling. But just keep working at it till you get the gear to fit down in there flush. Now, if it becomes to be too much of a hassle getting it to fit flush, you can actually take the gears out, work it down in by hand, outside the case like that, and then slide the whole thing back in. Sometimes you will have to do that. And it looks like that's the case this time. Yep. There we go. Now, that is locked. See, I'm spinning the input shaft on the other side, and it does not spin. The guts are locked tight because this gear right here keeps these other 2 from spinning. And that keeps the gear that's against the outside plates on this gear right here, from turning as well. That's what your input shafts come in and lock into. Now, what we can do is I can push this back up and I can put one of these gears between each one of these sets of teeth. You don't have to do that. Don't think I'm going to on this one either. You can if you want to for more peace of mind, but you don't have to. Because this right here is more than enough to lock this up. And then this way, if one of these gears ever breaks, you can just move one of the other gears over between the two that didn't break. And then you can, your diff's good and locked up again and good to go for a lot longer. I'm not running a ton of horsepower through this, so I don't think that's something I have to worry about. The plastic gears will bust along before these. So now all we got to do is reassemble everything. I'm not going to bother greasing this in here because none of these parts will move again. So there's no point to grease the inside of this. Before I'd packed this with a real thick grease because I wanted to slow down the diff action, but now we've slowed it down completely, so no moving parts, no need to lube them. Make sure when putting this back together that you don't over tighten the first screw you put in. Put in all three and then go around snugging them in a circle. You don't want to over tighten this anyway because you can crack this little plate right here. There we have it. The diff is now ready to reinstall. To reinstall, it's just the reverse of taking it out. We're going to go and drop this gear right down there in the center, like that. And then we'll put this counter gear in. Like so. Now what we're going to do before we put the case back on is we're just going to throw another little light coating of marine grease on here to cover back up that what was taken off. And like I said though, I'm going to go ahead and swap this motor real quick before I put the case back on. So you don't have to do that. I'm just doing that for my own personal preference. I have my motor now in place. A little old school there with that 65 turn, but don't have a gear reduction unit for it, so that should work nicely. Now, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and grease these gears in here. I got my marine grease out. Popsicle stick here. Just going to put a little bit of grease on here. And then we'll put the cover back on. Not going to go crazy with the grease this time. There's already decent enough grease in there. Just a little bit on those gears. I use marine grease because even though I don't have a waterproof speed controller in this yet, I still have a habit of finding my way into some shallow water from time to time. And one of these days I will have a waterproof speed controller in this. And whenever that time comes, the marine grease will help keep the water at bay, you know, if it ever gets up deep enough to enter any of the gearboxes. This will help keep the water from entering and causing severe damage. Okay, there we go, that's good. And now it's time to put the cover on. So let me put my grease up first. I do want to give you a tip before you put your cover on. Go ahead and slide your half shafts back in because that'll raise the diff back up where it needs to go and will help all the gears line up and make the cover slide back on easier. So I'm going to go ahead and slide those in. You will have to do a little bit of wiggling to get them to go in where they need to go because those splines need to line up with the diff. And just remember, it's easier to put on the one that has the long shaft sticking out of it first. It's easier to put it in because you can use that shaft to kind of pry up on the diff gear to get it to line up, because the diff gear will want to settle into that cavity and it'll want to kind of prevent you from sliding the half shafts in. There we go, both are pressed into place, and now we're ready to put the cover on. So a good look, make sure everything's in there where it needs to be. And usually this takes a little bit of wiggling to get it on, And there we go. Now we'll just go and put the screws in it. I like to do the one in the front and rear first, and do the two in the middle. Remember, don't over tighten them with your screw gun. Go back and give them your final torque with your screwdriver by hand, so you make sure you don't over tighten them. I like using a screw gun with a clutch, that way you can make sure you do not over tighten them. Okay. The grease right here, let's go ahead and wipe that off real quick. Okay, let's tighten these down now. It's very important not to over tighten this, because if you do, you can cause it to deform, and that will cause the seal around the edge to leak, which, okay, granted, will cause the grease to leak out, which isn't a big deal, but it will cause dirt to get in, and that is a big deal. Okay, there we go. That is all tightened. Now all we have left to do is put in the dog bones and reattach the upper links and put the tires back on. And then for most of you, this installation will be completed. We now have the truck back on all four wheels. Now, why do we do that? Here we go. Now you can see it. We spin the wheels. All four wheels have to spin together, and you notice both front wheels go the same direction. They cannot spin in opposite directions. Yes, there's a little bit of play there, but that's normal. That's just where the input shafts go in. And you have the same thing in the rear too. But now all four wheels, whenever one spins, they all spin. There's no more unloading the high wheel in the front. This will help it become a better trail rig overall. Like I said, it'll hurt the turning radius a little bit, but with the Alien Tech steering gear we have in it, and the modified knuckles or C-hubs that we did whenever we built the truck, and that gets given a lot more steering to the point that we're maxing out the dog bones in here and the cups, that we're going to replace those here real soon with a set of universals. So that's coming up soon. So make sure you keep an eye open for that. My next step is I have to go and reinstall my radio box. So I'm going to do that now. And here we are. We have our CC01 now ready to go back out and hit the trails. The front diff is locked up, so it makes it a much more competent trail rig than before. It should be able to hit those harder lines that before we had trouble with or couldn't take. So all four wheels will be able to dig, and that will help propel this little truck through tighter and harder areas of the trail. It's an easy mod. I highly recommend it. The best part is you probably have the parts already left over from where you put your CC01 together. If you pick yours up used or already put together, like an expert built one, the parts are easy to get cheaply. So that's a good thing. And if you have a friend with a CC01, they might have an extra gear they'll let you have. So I do highly recommend doing this mod. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you drop them below. You can check us out on Instagram. We post a lot there. The link to that is down below. Go ahead and feel free to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't, so you don't miss any future updates. Like I said, the next time you see this truck, she will be getting universals in the front to help with the steering a little bit more in it, because that is one of the shortfalls of the CC01 that we've been addressing with this truck. And right now we're getting where she has pretty good steering. So we just got to keep improving on that, and just little bits here and there. Well, until next time, I thank you for watching, and happy RCing.